In this video, I want to talk about the 4 rhetorical devices that we'll be covering in our class. So we may have heard these terms before, or at least a few of them, perhaps in a previous English course, maybe in high school, but we may not necessarily know what they are, or perhaps we need to review what they are, and some of them we've perhaps never even heard of. So the first term that we want to talk about is ethos. And what ethos refers to, in large part overall, is credibility. So if we're talking about an author's ethos or a speaker's ethos, we're referring to that author's ability to cultivate credibility, to be found trustworthy, to present themselves as a good character, somebody with good sense, somebody who might have good values, good morals, good ethics, right? And when we are presented with somebody who cultivates that idea of ethos, we in turn find them credible, right? So we're more likely to go along with what they have to say. We're more likely to listen to them. We're more likely to trust them, right? So that's largely what ethos refers to: credibility, character, trustworthiness. But there's some other elements of ethos that go into credibility. So something else that an author or a speaker might do in order to build their credibility is to establish common ground with their audience or their readers or whoever they're speaking with or presenting to. So when we use the phrase common ground, we mean things that people can agree on, right? Things that we have in common. So things that we share together. And when we are presented with somebody who shares things in common with us, again, we are more likely to find them credible and therefore more likely to listen to what they have to say or to go along with what they have to say, right? Another part of establishing common ground is connecting with an audience. So having a good connection with an audience. So there are a lot of ways to do that. If we're connecting with an audience, we might be demonstrating that we understand their perspective. We might be demonstrating that we perhaps share some of the same values or beliefs, right? So that's a part of connecting with the audience, and then also establishing common ground when we demonstrate that we have those things in common. And all of that, again, goes back to credibility, just being able to present ourselves as a trustworthy individual, somebody who's worth listening to, right? So that's ethos, ethical appeals, right? The next one is pathos. And pathos refers to the realm of emotion. These are emotional appeals. So pathos, that's the ancient Greek term for, it really means pity. But when we use the term pathetic, so you may have used that term before if you say, oh, that's pathetic. A lot of times we use that in a derisive term. We mean that in a negative way. But really what pathetic means, it means that we find somebody pitiable, right? We can sort of look down and see, oh gosh, that's terrible. That's terrible that they're there, right? But overall, just to generalize, pathos refers to emotion, okay, or passion. So think of all the kind of different emotions, the vast range of human emotions. There's so many of them, but some of the main ones, we might feel shame, we might feel anger, love, fear, hate, pity, sadness, disgust, joy, all kinds of different emotions. And obviously there's a lot of overlap with emotions, and certain emotions can be broken down into more specific emotions. But overall, the realm of pathos is emotion. So when we are maybe incorporating pathos into something that we are either presenting, so if we're delivering a speech or if we're talking to somebody, or in our writing, it means that we're trying to phrase certain things, use specific examples, use specific language that will evoke an emotional response. We want to make people feel certain ways because when we feel specific ways, that also influences if we find somebody credible, right? So keeping that in mind, pathos in the realm of emotion. Then the next one here is logos, and this is logical appeals. This refers to logic or reason, right? So whether or not something makes logical sense. So in writing, in speaking, for delivering a presentation, whatever it might be, when we're trying to incorporate logos, it means that we're basing our ideas on facts. We're incorporating strong, good evidence. We're incorporating examples and statistics, things that kind of demonstrate that what we're saying is based on good logic, good reason, right? So another aspect of logos is common sense. So common sense, it's not so common, ha ha ha. That's the kind of funny joke about it. But really what common sense is, it's things that we kind of accept or take for granted as what should be the case, right? So that's what we mean by common sense. Everybody should understand that they should, look both ways before they cross the street. We call that common sense, right? But all of that is in the realm of logic. Now, something else that is in the realm of logic that we may not necessarily think about is the way something is organized or structured. So think of a piece of writing. If all of the ideas contained in that piece of writing were all over the place, disorganized, not in any particular order, not in a way that makes sense, then that's going to damage the logic of that particular text, right? Or that piece of writing. It doesn't make sense to the reader, so therefore it's not logical. It's not going to be found credible also, right? But the way that things are organized can help demonstrate and show that logical connection between and among different ideas and details, right? So organization and structure is also a part of logos. How things are organized, how they connect to one another. Now, the fourth one is one that probably most of us haven't heard of, or at least maybe haven't really spent a lot of time or as much time as the other three kind of studying or understanding, and that's Kairos. Go ahead and say that one out loud. Kairos. Kairos. Go on, you can say it, no problem. Kairos. All right. So Kairos refers to the opportune moment. In essence, it refers, it's kind of like the right argument for the right time, the right moment. There are certain contexts where we might be presenting an argument or delivering a perspective, but if that's not the right time to make that argument or to give that piece of information, it could damage that piece of information, right? People may not want to hear it. They may not be receptive to what you're trying to say if it's not the right moment to deliver that, right? So an example would be, if say somebody's delivering a toast at a wedding reception. It may not be the right moment to start talking about how you think the bride and groom or whoever's being married should not be together, right? That's not perhaps the right moment to bring that argument up. It's not the right time for that, right? So that's an example of how, where Kairos wouldn't be considered. But in essence, it's just the right argument at the right time. Timeliness, the opportune moment, a good opportunity for delivering a message. Now, something else that goes along with that is context, and context means the surrounding circumstances for a given situation, right? So the context is very much important for when something is the right time to deliver a message or to make an argument. And the same is true of relevance. Relevance meaning the information connects to whomever you're delivering that message to. It's relevant to that audience. It's relevant to that context. It is the right time to make that statement, right? So that's what Kairos is all about. So again, we got ethos, which is generally credibility. Pathos, which is anything pertaining to emotion, eliciting emotional responses. Logos, anything that has to do with logic, sound reasoning, organization structure. And then Kairos, the opportune moment, right? Now, we might be tempted to think of these four different rhetorical devices as separate and distinct, not related, right? They're just kind of separate, different things. But that's not strictly true. And I made some references to this a little bit ago. More often than not, all four of these rhetorical devices work together in order to convey a message or to get an argument across successfully, right? So a good example of this, okay, so this is just information here, just a paragraph of what I just said, right? They all work together. And so a good example of this is the musical group, the Beatles. So here we go. We got the Beatles, Ringo, John, Paul, George. Oh my God, I just forgot their names for a second. That's crazy. Okay, anyway, we got the Beatles here. And each member of the Beatles played their own instrument, right? They had their own unique contribution to the band, the Beatles, right? So in this way, each one is separate, right? So Ringo, the drummer, John, one of the key songwriters, guitar players, Paul played bass, another singer, one of the key singers, key songwriter, and then George Harrison, another guitarist, another singer, another songwriter. But they all had different styles and different things to bring together to make the Beatles, right? So we can't call each of these, on their own the Beatles. It's when all four of them are joined together. That's the Beatles, right? So a really interesting, a good song to think about here is their song Come Together. Come together right now over me. You guys can look it up on YouTube. But when you listen to that song, each member is contributing in a unique way, So Ringo's playing this really interesting drum beat. It's not like a straightforward, just kind of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it's got a really interesting time signature. It's really interesting rhythm. And then there's the bass kind of comes in. It's a little different, and the guitars and the way that John is singing, all of that stuff. It's very interesting, and they're all bringing their unique contributions to that song, right? But we wouldn't say, just because John Lennon wrote that song, it's therefore John Lennon's song. No, it's the Beatles' song. But, we can see each individual contribution. And so that's the same is true of Ethos, Pathos, Logos, and Kairos, right? So while they all have unique roles to play and they all have unique definitions, when they come together, they kind of create this, they create this thing together, right? And so that's true of arguments and texts and things that we might be studying and how we might be creating things. All of these things work together in order to create a successful argument. Now, each characteristic we can point out, like, okay, yeah, that's ethos, okay, that's logos, I see that, okay, a little bit of pathos there, okay, kairos. But together they really make that, make the argument successful when they're working together. All right, so I'm going to end this video here, and there's another video called The Rhetorical Matrix that will demonstrate a little bit more how these four rhetorical devices work together or come together. All right, I'll catch you all there.